day 3 of Transgender Awareness Week video challenge, where I intend to make one video a day, or at least upload a video every day. I might cheat and make a couple of videos on one day across the week. So for those of you who don't know, Transgender Awareness Week is from the 13th to the 19th of November, culminating on the 20th, which is Transgender Day of Remembrance. So today's video, I thought I'd talk a little bit about a common question that you see. How do I know I'm trans? Or what if I'm trans, or I'm transgender? What do I do now? And that's, I think, if you're having that kind of awakening moment, I think that asking that question into the universe is quite a common thing for people to do. Now, the first thing I'll say is if you think you're trans, you might be, you might not be. I don't know. I can't really tell you one way or the other. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not inside your head and can see the truth of who you are. But if you really are worried about this and it's something that you need to look into further, I would absolutely recommend you don't do what I spent the majority of my life doing and worrying about it, bottling it up and doing nothing about those thoughts until you get a kind of an explosion at some point. It isn't great. Explosions are never healthy. So I would suggest speaking to somebody should always be your first kind of action. And it doesn't have to be a therapist, although that certainly helps. I know that sometimes it can be quite difficult to have access to therapy, at least good therapists, at the very least. Speak to somebody that you trust, somebody that you think will not necessarily accept this at face value, but somebody who's not going to start screaming and shouting and will hopefully have your back and support you regardless of whatever the outcome of that conversation is. Having these conversations with people really did firm up my own identity, and it just reinforced that sense of who I am. It was really useful for me to speak to people about it, even though it was terrifying at the time. But the more I spoke about it, the easier it became, the more I managed to find the words and eventually, sit down and start this channel several years later. Another thing I would suggest is, and this is probably easier to say than to do, is don't panic and don't start feeling that you need to do something immediately, whatever that action is. It's possible that this is just a phase, this is just a bump, this is a blimp, this is just something that you just need to explore and think and talk about. And then you might conclude that actually you're not transgender after all. Maybe you're non-gender conforming, maybe you're non-binary, maybe you're cis and you just like to express yourself in a way that's not consistent of your assigned gender at birth. There's a lot of options available. There's a very broad scale of how one expresses and feels about their own gender. Being transgender is just one of them. And while it might be nice to think that there are more of us out there, I'm not going to suggest to people that they need to start rushing into decisions about hormones and therapy and that sort of thing without having explored all of the other options first. That's really important that you do that. And by panicking and worrying and stressing about it, you're only probably going to put that process back and maybe engage with it in a less than honest way. So please do make sure that you manage to stay calm, as hard as that might sound. So yeah, anyway, those are the two things that I wanted to touch on. I'm trying to keep these videos quite short, so yeah, I hope that you found this very tiny amount of advice useful. If you have more questions, if there's anything else that you need to know, feel free to ask in the comments section. And it's possible that if some of these videos, short as they are, gain a bit of traction and gain a bit of popularity, I can expand on them and make a longer version at some point in the future. What I'm asking people to do through this week as well is, if they're feeling generous, if they're feeling like they've got some extra cash sloshing around, although I know that's probably not the case, I'm asking people to make donations to a couple of charities that I've seen that seem to do good work. There's Mermaids UK, who provide support for trans youth in the UK, which is a place at a time where they desperately need it. And there's Trans Rescue as well, an organisation I came across relatively recently who support trans people as they move countries. I'll put the links below, and if you feel like you want to make a contribution, that would be very, very, very welcome. Thank you very much. Anyway, take care, have a good week. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.